Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning into today's webinar. My name is Annika Dariwal, and I'm 16 years old, and I'm currently studying in grade 10 at Cheltenham Ladies College in the UK. I was diagnosed with celiac disease when I was 9 years old, and as a result of this, I started Gluten Free Jio, a social platform that is dedicated to increasing access and awareness and access to resources and information regarding celiac disease and living a gluten-free lifestyle in India. Before the webinar is started, please keep in mind that the webinar is being recorded. The link to the recording will be shared shortly after the webinar. I request all attendees to keep their mic muted during this session. There will be a Q&A at the end, so please type in any questions that you have, and we shall take them at the end as time permits. So we'll start off with introductions, then a bit about Gluten Free Jio, insights by Mrs. Mona Sarup, a Q&A, and resources provided by Gluten Free Jio at the end. So today we are lucky enough to have with us Mrs. Mona Sarup. She's a nutrition and lifestyle coach from Precision Nutrition. She's the owner of the Pilates Studio Chandigarh and the founder of Refuel Nutrition. She has a master's and honors in biochemistry. Gluten Free Jio is a social project that seeks to increase awareness and access to information on celiac disease and living a gluten-free lifestyle in India. Our mission is to create awareness by conducting information sessions in collaboration with schools, to promote testing and diagnosis for families from diverse backgrounds in partnership with local diagnostic facilities, and to provide resources, tips, and materials to help celiacs lead a healthy gluten-free lifestyle. We have conducted workshops in over 12 schools and virtually connected 100 schools across Chandigarh and Punjab to increase awareness. We've reached out to over 1,000 students. The Mayor of Chandigarh has also attended our session and recognized Gluten Free Jio for its work in 2019. Gluten Free Jio was also recognized by the Councillor and ex-Deputy Mayor of Chandigarh, and she applauded us for our work done during the pandemic this year in 2020. We have developed free educational resources, including a children's book, blog, and educational videos to promote information about celiac disease. Gluten Free Jio now has a community of over 13,000 followers on social media. We have also developed an app to increase access to gluten-free resources, such as restaurants serving gluten-free food and grocery stores which carry gluten-free supplies. And now on to what you're all here for today, what you need to know about having gluten-free diet. So thank you so much, Mrs. Sarup, for being here with us today. And I'd like to start off by asking you, what is gluten, and how does it affect a person specifically with celiac disease?
So hi, Annika. It's a pleasure to be here with you and being able to have this conversation. Gluten essentially is a storage protein found essentially in cereals like wheat, barley, rye, triticale, and any of the hybridized varieties made with wheat will have gluten. Generally, it's 8 grams per 100 grams wheat. The quantity of gluten is present whenever we use it. It is a storage protein. It gives wheat the food technological property it has because it becomes more adhesive. It's easy for us to make dough and make chapatis as a result, or make bread or cakes because it has this gel-like consistency. For celiac, the persons are told to go completely off diet. I mean, if a patient has celiac, and the predisposition of such an individual is that they have inherited it genetically in their genes, that they have a celiac predisposition, which is triggered off when we eat gluten-rich food. So what really happens to a celiac patient is that our small intestine is the place where the food gets absorbed. And in such a way that the lining has these very small finger-like projections, which are called the microvilli. And the food, once it has been broken down in the stomach, reaches the small intestine. And once it reaches the small intestines, these villi, in a normal, healthy individual, can absorb the food from here. Now, gluten's makeup of these 2 amino acids, which a celiac cannot absorb, what it happens, these microvilli become enlarged, and there becomes like a kind of the gut starts, not being able to absorb or has finger-like projections which form a barrier in the stomach or in the intestine. And there's malabsorption of nutrition. And as a result, what happens is that the celiac starts feeling uncomfortable, nauseatic, diarrhea starts, and it has a whole lot of symptoms like vomiting. Lack of nutrition is the main reason why now a celiac patient or a celiac child may not show growth. There's retardation of growth because essentially what the gut is doing is not absorbing the right nutrients. So that's what happens.
So yeah, I completely resonate with what you said about malnutrition and your body not absorbing nutrition. Because before I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I was one of the shortest people in my class, and then my mom was like, "Why is she not growing?" And then every few months, I was getting actually not even every few months. It was like every 15 to 20 days, I was getting a really high temperature, and that was a result of my body not absorbing nutrition. And then I was getting that temperature because my immune system was so compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So then once a person is diagnosed with celiac disease, why is it necessary for them to see a nutritionist and get a really structured plan?
So that's a very interesting question, and I'll tell you why. And it's really the nutritionist's responsibility to walk the patient of celiac through why is it important that the diet changes have to be made. So for a person who has celiac, unfortunately, there is no other treatment for that patient or that individual but to go off gluten-free diet. There has to be only that they cannot ingest gluten at all into their system. So that's the only treatment. So who comes into play? The nutritionist. And what happens is when you have to do a gluten test, like the TTG test, the doctors advise you to have a gluten-rich diet for a period of 10 days so that the test does come and your TTG levels are high or low according to a celiac stat thing. So the minute I'm the nutritionist, I get to know that my patient's levels are high and she is tested positive for celiac. My first advice to them would be advising and educating my client about what celiac essentially is and why is it important for them to be off gluten, the advantages of being off gluten, now how much relief they are going to get by not consuming gluten-rich food. Also educating them that if they do consume if they do consume gluten by chance, what is going to happen to their system? Then, because that client did not know that she had gluten, allergy or is celiac necessarily, obviously they have low vitamin count, their vitamin D is low, vitamin B to B12 is low, their essential nutrient, because the fiber is not absorbed by the nutrition. So the prebiotic and the postbiotic, the gut entirely needs a gut cleanse, as in the whole bacterial biome has been disturbed. So I advise them to go for testing at least 3 months initially, and then up to 6 months when their levels have come down. Getting a DEXA scan, very important, because vitamin D is fairly low in a celiac patient. So a DEXA scan is advised at least once a 6 months. And then my fourth job is, once I've educated my patient, how to make interesting swaps in their diet. The problem is people end up thinking that it's difficult to do, but in our Indian households, all the swaps are in our kitchen. All we have to do is change the cereal in which we are making chapati, like start using ragi, bale, jwar, or even makki, and have chapatis like that. And you can easily eat rice. There's no gluten in rice. So educating the child or the parents what swaps are necessary and so easy to do. Then I have to also educate them how to read food labels when they're going out shopping for gluten-free products. Then also educate them how to eat out socially. Like if they're going to go out, it is very important that all their caregivers are told what not to eat and what to eat. So if you're going to a birthday party, you have to definitely send in advance, this is the food you can eat. And if they cannot eat, we have to make you understand that you're not going to eat the food once you reach that birthday party. So educating them then how to travel, very important for my client to know how to lead their daily lifestyle. It's a change. It's very easy to adapt. It's just that the first 6 months, the nutritionist should hold the hand of her patient, which she should anyways, and walk them through the swaps, and then it becomes easy.
I completely agree with the, when giving a nutrition plan, especially and going to a nutritionist, if you've been diagnosed with celiac disease in your teen years or as a kid, so maybe like after you're 5 or 6 years old when you actually understand what it is. Because as kids going through, peer pressure, being a
Yeah.
teenager, all this, like, so if your friends are eating a pizza or a cake, you're like, I want to eat that. And it's harder for kids to understand that, you can't eat that because, and I guess it's really important. That's why for a dietitian to explain the bad effects that can have you on your body, because
Yeah.
that's really what's going to help you have
Yeah.
that mentally, that you can't eat that. Otherwise, it's going to have such a traumatic effect.
Yeah.
And then also for travel, as you mentioned, that it's important to understand when traveling that you should have a whole, system in place. And, once that system is in place, that you just need to follow that every
Yeah.
time you're traveling. So essentially, like when I'm traveling, I use these gluten-free restaurant cards that are
Mm-hmm.
actually available on Gluten Free Jio as well in
Mm-hmm.
all the regional languages of India.
Mm-hmm.
So that travel card is essentially summing up in a nutshell what celiac is,
Mm-hmm.
what you can or cannot eat, and then it's so easy to just hand that to a waiter in a restaurant, and then you also have a peace of mind that your meal is 100% gluten-free
Gluten-free.
when they're cooking it in the
Yeah.
kitchen. Yeah.
Yes. And also the last part, which I have to educate parents or the individual who's suffering, their kitchen has to be completely free of gluten. So as a result, we cannot have contamination. So it's best to keep your utensils separate, like your mom keeps the kitchen separate, right? Your utensils in which we are cooking for a celiac have to be absolutely not in which we have cooked a wheat-rich food. Also something like a toaster, an old toaster is going to also cause problems. So things like that have to be educated. Like, you have to educate the individual that don't do that. Be clean. Even the washing of the utensils have to be separate. You can't mix it because the amount which you can consume is so less. It's 20 ppm. It's hardly an amount you can consume for the disease to be triggered off. And since once the symptoms show off, they go back like 5 days. It takes so much of, um, I'm sure you know what happens. You get
Yeah.
so uncomfortable in the stomach. You're all the time having a pain, and it just causes that trigger, which is hard to let go because there's
Mhm.
no medicine which we can give you apart from
Yeah.
that you can have some activated charcoal or a lot of water. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. And the worst thing is that there's over 300 symptoms. So it's like a range of things that can affect all parts of your body. Like
Yeah.
personally, I get really bad migraines. Luckily, I don't have any bad stuff with my stomach, but I get a horrible migraine. Then you just can't get through the rest of the day. And then, as you mentioned, a toaster. So I go to boarding school.
Hmm.
And over there, before I went there, of my mum and me, we wrote a long email to the catering department, and they cook everything for me in a separate pan, and then they have a separate scrub as well. They don't
Uh-huh.
put it in the main dishwasher as well. So yeah,
So all these changes are important. But once the individual understands, it's so easy to do. It's just a
absolutely.
part of our life, and it's just a way of adapting. And that's why I explain to patients that it's not so hard to do, and don't freak out. It's going to be fine, and you don't get any episode, and then you're fine, and you're just
Yeah.
like the other normal healthy person. It's just that you have to take care of what you're eating. It's just as simple as that.
So why is gluten not desirable even for people if you're not suffering from celiac disease or a wheat allergy?
So this is something which is very interesting. Like if I tell someone today, and I'm sure the audience is hearing today, that this is suddenly developed, and we've been eating wheat forever. But if you look at the wheat which our grandmoms used to eat, and you look at the wheat grain now, and you put it under the microscope, and I've actually done that, they don't look like each other at all. Um, the reason being that over a period of time, just to increase the number of grains per plant because of green revolution, in 1950s, people were just starving and all we wanted was more food on the plates. So the scientists tried to hybridize varieties where there's more grain and less nutrition. We were not caring about nutrition because just trying to put food on the plate. As a result, the new grain has 30% more gluten than what used to be present earlier on. almost negligible fiber. The vitamins which we talk about in the original wheat plant are no longer there. So having such a rich gluten rich wheat is actually of no use. It just is not important in our body. That protein present in the gluten, which you can't digest, maybe because you're celiac, but even I can't digest because it's very hard to break down in our system. The digestive enzymes can't break it down. And so it's not really important. Also, it's a very interesting thing, and I really want everybody to understand this. Um, so lots of times I get clients, when I tell them that let's try going off gluten and it's going to help you, they come back with me to telling me, oh, I have a headache. Just like you get a migraine, they get a headache by not eating gluten, or just going on a gluten-free diet when I try to tell them to do a gut cleanse. And the reason is, the minute we ingest it, the minute it reaches the stomach, the gluten becomes like a gluten morphine. And that triggers uh, this thing in the brain, which is the opioid receptors in the brain, which make the brain kind of sluggish and happy. And it's the same addictive receptor which is there for opium, or even when we have excess sugar. So what is happening is we are getting addicted to it. So then when we quit our bread or our chapati, that's what happens. And that's why, that's the only reason people just want to gravitate towards bread, because it's that feel good factor, which it hits. So that's what happens. And how the brain and the stomach is connected, we always talk about the fact that we have a gut feeling. So there's a vagus nerve from the stomach which hits the brain, and that's the nerve which is always sending signals to the brain. Okay, give me food, give me less food, or I'm stressed out, give me serotonin, give me this, give me that. This, the minute the morphine hits the stomach, the gluten morphine hits the stomach, sends that receptor to activate, and the brain is like, okay, I like this, I need to be addicted. That's what happens.
Yeah.
But still gives a migraine. What gives you as a thing when you have it, it still gives when you don't have it for the first 10 days. And then your addiction.
Yeah. Your
Yeah.
body kind of adapts.
Yeah.
So then why was a gluten-free diet, wasn't talked about before, but now it's become so popular? Is it just a fad because, all the celebrities are promoting it, or, what's the reason for this?
So it's, anything in our country starts as a fad because they might watch someone who's gone gluten free becoming fitter, right? Becoming thinner. So it's not that gluten free diet is going to make you thinner. It's just the right choices in your food when you're off gluten. And, if you're addicted, just like I told you, if your body craves for bread, you'll end up eating more bread, right? So when you go off gluten, what is really happening is that you are avoiding gluten, eating more healthy, more fruits, more vegetables, more cereals, which are more rich in iron, rich in vitamins, rich in minerals, rich in fiber. And, so it shouldn't be a fad diet. And that's why I explain to my client every time they walk in that it's not a fad. The reason why we are not eating gluten is, one, because you would feel better. Two, gluten also increases something called leaky gut. So when we eat gluten, there's this protein which is released in our stomach, which is called zonulin, and that is an inflammatory protein. What it is going to do, it is going to make our gut leaky. And when I talk about gut, I must tell all of you what it really means. So gut means that the minute we ingest food into our mouth, so the mouth is part of the gut, your esophagus is part of the gut, your stomach is part of the gut, your small intestine, where the absorption of the nutrients happens, part of the gut, the large intestine, and the rectum. Now, what is happening is that the minute so the food is only going to be in the gut. We do not let it come out into the bloodstream. The gut lining is very tight. The thin, like half a here, when you cut half a here, that's the amount it is thin, but it is very tight and it's non-permeable. This inflammatory protein, which I was just telling you about, what it does is it makes the gut permeable or leaky, and food particles go out into the bloodstream, and our immunity is triggered off. And what it does is it tries to eliminate that foreign particle. But because there's something like this gluten particle may look like my thyroid molecule or may look like a sugar molecule, the body starts eliminating these particles as well. And so gluten doesn't do good for all of us.
So what foods most commonly contain gluten, the ones that we're using daily?
So wheat, rye, barley, triticale, any hybrid of wheat, malt. Malt is a malt syrup, which may be an extraction of gluten. Some people who drink alcohol, something like beer, is made from either
Mm,
barley or from wheat, or not distilled properly, will contain gluten. So we need to be off anything which is a product of any of these.
mm. Yeah, and I was also really surprised when I was diagnosed with celiac disease because I personally really like South Indian food, so I eat a lot of dosa and sambar. And then I learned that dosa is fine because it's made of rice and that whole mixture. But sometimes when they're binding it, they're
Mhm,
using different binding agents, and usually they're using like a flour mixture. But
mhm.
that's not even the thing that surprised me most was that asafoetida or hing, a
Yeah, yeah,
spice, which is that's the only Indian spice which does contain gluten. But
yeah.
so that is used in heating in all the Indian restaurants. So then you're unable to eat that. So, but then if you're going out to like a Saga Ratna, you want
Mhm.
to ask them to make the sambar. If they have the separate sambar, you just have to avoid it. But it's very doable at home.
Yeah. So, the most important way to then order is just to make sure you understand that these are the things we are not going to order with. Yeah,
Mm.
that's interesting. Mhm.
So could you suggest like a simple gluten-free meal plan that you could do like for a whole day?
So it's so easy to do, and it's so nutrient rich, and the swaps are there right in our Indian kitchen. Forget what you can make with other stuff. Uh, you know, you can easily swap everything. And For example, if I have to eat a breakfast which is not gluten rich, um, and if I'm an vegetarian, I can do eggs with maybe an appam. It doesn't have any gluten. I can make an omelette, and I can do a gluten-free toast. If you're celiac, it's very important. If you're non-celiac and you still want to eliminate gluten, I would even do a sourdough bread because that's pre-digested gluten, and digest it much better. So that's a very, very good swap to have. All the South Indian breakfasts like idli, dosa, sambar, they are easy to do, so you can have them for breakfast. You can do a chila, a moong dal chila. You can do a besan chila. You can also do a poha, and make it with a lot of vegetables, and it's nice and nutrient. You can have a smoothie, and you can also do a pancake recipe, which is my most favorite. For you celiac, for an individual who's celiac, they need to buy oats which are gluten free, with the label. Otherwise, all of us can do that. So all you need to do is add like 3 spoons of oats, 2 eggs, 1 banana, mash it all up, add a little bit of honey, and make it like your regular pancake. And it's so easy to do, and it's yummy as hell. And or if you want to do it in almond flour, that's an easy swap to do. And then For lunch, you can do rice with any of the legumes, whether it's rajma. You can do rajma chawal, you can do chana chawal, you can do, chicken chawal, you can do a chicken biryani, you can do chicken and, appam, nee dosa. You can even do something like a ragi roti. Now, the best thing to do is everybody who's listening today, Google Nachni Roti. That has changed my life. For me to not eat a wheat chapati has become so easy. Just Google Nachni Roti. You will love the swap. It is so light on the stomach, high on iron content, high on vitamin B's and everything. In fact, buying a packaged gluten-free flour is also a very easy way to make chapatis. But personally, I feel that's high on rice. Our regular grains like these millets are so good to do, or even a jwar roti is good to do. And these days, makki roti is a fantastic alternative to have in your other meals. Um, for snacks, in fact, I was going to tell everybody to try these energy balls, which we give in refuel to all our clients. All you need to do is throw in carrots, and these days carrots are so good, easily available in the market. Throw in 3 carrots in the mixer. Uh, Throw in 5 dates. We're not going to even use sugar. Uh, De-seed them, add those 5 dates into the thing, add 3 spoons of chia seeds, and to that add like half a cup of almond flour and coconut flour, and mix it all up. it becomes like this nice dough, roll it into balls, and then roll it on the coconut flour. They are amazing energy laddus, we call them, or we call them energy balls. I personally even add my protein powder to it. So at like 5, if I want to eat something healthy, this is my go-to. It's nutty, it's yum, and it's just fabulous. It's got everything. It's got fruit, it's got vegetables, and it's got healthy sugars, good fats, and we're good to go. And it's gluten-free.
You know how you mentioned oats earlier, because I was just looking in the Q&A box and someone asked if oats are gluten-free, and they are actually naturally gluten-free, but you still need to get the ones which say they are certified gluten-free, because the problem is sometimes the oats are grown in the same field as the wheat crop, and that's how they get contaminated. But they are naturally gluten-free, but you need to get the ones that have been grown in a completely
Sometimes the
separate,
manufacturer,
non-contaminated environment.
yeah, sometimes even the manufacturers may be doing a wheat flour and an oat flour. So,
Mm,
like you said, so they can cross contaminate. And yeah, you're right, they can be grown together. So then again, the contamination can happen.
yeah,
All you need to look is for a gluten-free brand of oats
label,
if
yeah.
you are celiac, right?
So, if for a busy mother, for packing her kids' tiffin, what would you say is like a really good gluten-free alternative that's yummy and also gluten-free at the same time?
Easy to do. So, see, fruits are great to do. Give them with almond butter, cut up apple, send them with that. Banana chips are such an easy alternative. Something like sometimes they want a piece of cake and a great piece of cake. Just swap your flour with the almond flour, coconut flour. You can use even rice flour, and the cakes whip out just the same. The ratio of eggs to, your you can even use flax eggs if you're, vegetarian. You don't need to really use the normal eggs for baking. You can use flax eggs, and it'll be very nice for binding. There are these binding agents which are gluten free, something like xanthan gum, guar guar, or xylem husk. We should use those if you really want like a tight cake, and it should be good to go.
And also, when I remember when I used to go to school here back in India, and really good alternative to do rather than doing like fresh food, if, as I said, because specifically for a busy mother, you could get packaged items, like packaged. So if you have like biscuits which are already in the package, then it's like just
Yeah.
really easy to put together. And also the really nice thing to with a lot of the gluten-free food is it's like so packaged separately, because they're doing that to avoid contamination, but that actually just comes across here as helpful to anyone, because it's just packaged separately and then you just pop it in the bag and it's like
Yeah,
really quick.
and also you could also sometimes, think about if it's difficult to do, you could just have these assortments already ready in the kitchen, that thing, and all you have to do is just pick that up and put it in the tiffin.
Mhm.
So it just becomes easy, especially if it's like a single packing, then it's easy to put in the tiffin for the parents. Yeah.
So, for you being a student of biology and now a certified nutritionist, have you seen that the gluten-free diet plans that you've been giving out to people, has it been beneficial for anyone suffering from other autoimmune disorders besides celiac?
So I feel, in fact, I am a biologist as well as now certified to, give out nutritional diets. But myself, I use myself as a guinea pig. I have thyroid and I'm a hypothyroid patient. And for me, I'd struggled with the, weight loss in that way where I would have this bloating in the evening and a tightness around my abdomen every time I'd eat gluten. And I wouldn't understand why that was happening. It's only when I understood that, maybe going gluten free might help me, I realized that it triggers off my thyroid if I have gluten. And how? Like I explained initially, gluten gives us a leaky gut because of that inflammatory protein called zonulin. And once the gluten enters into the bloodstream, from the gut into the bloodstream, what really happens is that the molecule of gluten and the molecule of thyroid is so similar in structure. The minute a foreign particle hits our bloodstream, our bodies are naturally taught to trigger off their immune system. My immune system must be getting triggered off. And what was happening was, uh, not only was the foreign particle being tried to, taken out of my body, the body would also attack my thyroid molecule. And I'm already hypothyroid, which means that I'm producing less thyroid. And as a result of this, what was happening was I was eliminating even more, whatever T3, T4 molecules were present. And it's also called molecular mimicry. And I went gluten free myself, and it's almost been a year. And when I say gluten free, I go with the 80-20 way, which means that at least 80% of the amount of gluten I was consuming, I'm not consuming anymore. And I feel so much better. I do not get that bloating. If you wake up in the morning and suddenly your stomach feels like, oh my God, round it off, or your lower gut is complaining, your jeans feel tighter, you are just uncomfortable. That all has gone. And I really want to tell everybody that not only does it trigger off an autoimmune like hypothyroid, but also like type 1 diabetes. It triggers off something like PCOS. For young girls, it's a big, big problem. For parents who might have girls suffering from that, please eliminate gluten. It is not helping them at all. So a lot of people are talking about a lot of autoimmune diseases. Why more? Because our immunity is suffering because of the leaky gut. And what is causing the leaky gut? The pastas, the cakes, the extra biscuits, what we are consuming, that's what is causing it. And nowadays, the pastas are so easy to get. Go buy a legume pasta, which is gluten free. It'll be higher on protein. Go buy a pea protein pasta. It's so easy to avail. You can still have your spaghetti, and you can still have your pasta. Just get the one which is gluten free.
And the alternatives taste exactly the same. I mean, I've been doing it for like the past
You
six
tell
or
me, does
seven
it
years
or does
now.
it not?
It
You tell
tastes the same because it might be initially, you might feel like the textures. I think the hardest thing that might be for anyone wanting to transition would be the taste of bread. But because specifically if you've been diagnosed with it when you order, if you're just trying it when you order, but because I've been having the gluten-free bread since I was like 8 years old, I just can't feel the difference now. And
Yeah.
for pasta, it's the same. And as you said, the pasta is probably way healthier if you have a gluten-free one. And you
Yeah,
use the same sauce because like
because,
tomato doesn't have gluten in it. So and
yeah,
neither does the
exactly.
cheese
Neither
sauce.
does
So
pesto have gluten in it. I mean, you're going to make the pesto sauce with nuts, and you're going to do it with basil. Your Neapolitan sauce is just going to have tomatoes and garlic, which is anyways good for you. So the swaps are so interesting and so easy to do. I would tell everybody, you want to have pasta, go ahead, have the right pasta. You want to have even like a Thai curry, all you need to do is swap your soy sauce to a coconut aminos, and you're good to go. All your umami flavors are right there.
yeah, because as you mentioned soya sauce right now, again, I was looking in the Q&A box and someone said, is soya sauce gluten free? Well, soya sauce isn't
Oh,
gluten free, but you can get alternate. You can just, and it tastes the same again because I'm really fond of sushi,
uh-huh.
and I just use when I'm going out to like a sushi restaurant because most of them don't have gluten free soya sauce. I just carry mine and Kikkoman, like one of the most famous soya sauce brands in the world. They have their normal line and then they have a gluten free range. So it's
Yeah.
really easily available on Amazon. So please don't use normal soy sauce because that's not gluten free.
I think nobody should choose the normal soy sauce. It causes you to bloat. It causes water retention. Everybody go on coconut aminos. It gives you the same flavor. So, it's so easy to swap it. Yeah. But that's interesting. And it's so interesting giving that insight. Like when you go out and order out, it's so important to be aware what to ask your manager or the restaurant you're going to,
Mm.
to be able to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really, yeah. So, what percentage should a person on a gluten-free diet assign to macro and micronutrients?
Okay, this is a myth I want to bust. The macros and micros for all of us remain the same. It is a 30 is to 30 is to 40 ratio, meaning your 30% will be your proteins, 30% in your diet should have fats, and 30% in your 40% are your carbohydrates. All we are doing is in that carbohydrates, we are not eating gluten, right? And so when we are not eating gluten or essentially wheat, we are using finding that carb content from maybe rice, maybe something like millets, or we are finding it from corn. We have quinoa, amaranth, so many other grains which we can easily use as a source of carbs. The wheat may have extra fiber, which used to, the new variety doesn't have as much of fiber, but that can be replaced if you feel you need to add a little fiber to your gut. And I always tell my, you know, clients that that's one thing they must do. This is called prebiotic drink, which you should have like half an hour before your meal. You can take xylem husk or cassia, which is fiber, add a little bit of your apple cider vinegar to it, add a little bit of cinnamon and honey, and have it half an hour before your food. That'll actually help the bacterial colonies in your stomach to grow. We are actually, this is a fact, we are 80% bacteria, 20% our own cells. And why? Because there are trillions of bacteria which stay in our gut, and they should stay. We should not destroy that colony. For them to grow, they need the prebiotic drink. So just do that. It's a great, great way to, encourage good gut health and less bloating, less feeling sick and nauseatic or diarrhea, and your poop structure remains great, and you're good to go.
So, is it true that going on a gluten-free diet leads to weight loss? Because I feel this is such a common talked about theme just on social media and even just normal discussions.
I personally feel that if you're doing the right gluten-free swaps, you will lose weight. Why? Because one, your addiction to the unnecessary bread goes out of your system. Two, you do end up eating more fruits and vegetables and proteins, and your carbs are, like I just told you, my swap to from a chapati or a parantha to a nachni roti or a nachni prada has been so easy because I feel fuller when I've eaten lesser. The nutrients are absorbed better. My gut is feeling healthier, and I am feeling more energetic. If I'm feeling more energetic, I can exercise better. For example, like I feel I do Pilates in a much better fashion than I used to do maybe 2 years ago. And exercise becomes such a good part into the routine because it's giving you the right energy to move, and feeling better internally is exactly what's going to make you feel bad. So this is another interesting thing which I tell everybody. How good you feel mentally. You might have the best car, you might be earning the right amount of money, you might have the best friend circle, everything. But if internally you're all the time not feeling good, and your microbes are not working, you're going to be sad. And the anxiety, again, the vagus nerve is also going to keep on going, tell brain, oh, I'm not feeling good. And what is the brain going to do? It's going to send in signals, which is going to release the stress hormone, and you're going to be unhappy. So make your gut happy. That's the most important thing to do. If your gut is happy, you are obviously very, very happy. So,
And being a sports person myself,
oh
over
yeah.
the over the years, I've really been tapped. So essentially, because the question is that does gluten-free diet lead to weight loss? But over the years, I've been tempted on multiple occasions and have gotten into eating the gluten-free junk food. Gluten-free junk food is as unhealthy as normal junk food. It's not
Yes.
healthier.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's very,
And it
very.
can even be more unhealthy than normal junk food because
Yeah,
to
yeah.
make the food taste better, they're adding more sugar and there's more other additives that, way more harmful than what may be in like a
Yeah.
normal wheat brownie. But then you can also make them really healthy. So it's kind of just up to you how you want to approach your gluten-free diet. But definitely, if people think that a gluten-free junk food is healthier than normal junk food, you're like
No,
completely
no, 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 no,
mistaken.
please. In fact, it's going to be high. So the best way, and I feel all of us should be good consumers. So turn around, look at the label content. You'll see there'll be saturated, unsaturated fats, or maybe they've used oil like sunflower oil, which is anyways unhealthy for your gut. So even if you're going gluten free, you've upped the sugar content, you've upped the corn syrup, or if there is going to be some additive like, some maltodextrin or something as silly as even adding, very less healthy flour, but adding using oils which are not healthy. So all we need to do is look at the right labels, read them, be very, even if you're going to go to a mall and pick up a packaged food because you can't make it, just be informed, look at the label, read it properly, and see for those hidden things which you're not going to be eating, like fructose, you know, names which may sound very, very healthy, but they're really not. So that's what we should do.
And is it more expensive to be on a gluten-free diet?
Personally, see, if you're going to go and buy all these packaged products, they are difficult for the manufacturer also to make a gluten-free bread is obviously more expensive because the ingredients used in them are much more expensive than normal bread. But for example, if I swap the pasta to the healthier pasta, a gluten-free pasta, it will also have more protein. So vis-a-vis the amount of nutrients you'll get, it should be fine. But the best way to educate an Indian client, and why I'm talking about the fact that we are in India, we cook a lot in our kitchens. We have the swaps right there. If you're not getting the wheat atta, please go get the ragi atta. Go get the jwar atta. Go get the makki atta. They are going to cost you the same. All you need to do is learn how to make those chapatis. Have rice. Rice is going to cost the same. Legumes are going to cost the same. Dal rice is going to cost the same. Rajma rice is going to cost the same. So why is it people are trying to tell everybody that going on a gluten-free diet might be more expensive? Yeah, eating out is restrictive for a celiac patient. They have to ask the restaurant whether, and also understand from the restaurant, are they gluten, free meals friendly or not. But otherwise, the diets are not at all expensive. If your swaps are right, they are just the same,
Yeah, and
almost,
also
except like
the
too much packaged products, which I,
exactly. And the thing is that most of Indian food, as you said, your dal, your
yeah,
rajma, it's naturally gluten free. So you're probably paying the same amount that you were paying before you even decide to go gluten free. And then for things like bread, you can, if you're really like worried about the cost, you could even try it at home, because the
yeah,
cost of the flour might be like maybe just a bit more
just
costlier.
get
But
back.
then once you develop a recipe, then just following that all the time, and there's multiple recipes online. There's no lack of that.
We'll send you
And
a refill recipe later on. We can just add to the gluten this thing, how to bake a bread. And it's just a seed bread and it's very healthy to do. We'll put it online on the,
yeah, and I have a recipe book coming out as well. So all of this that we're covering today is all going to be, all these recipes of these yummy food items should hopefully be covered in that. And also, on the topic of bread, again, I was looking in the Q&A section and someone said, is yeast gluten free? And it is, right? Because I've
yes,
in
unless the extract is from barley. Sometimes the
yeah.
extract is from barley. That time, they've taken it from the alcohol extract and then they use that to ferment. That's the only time. Otherwise, yeast extract is not. That is why the sourdough extract, the starter, we can use to make gluten-free breads.
Mm-hmm. And I can confirm that as well, like physically, because in school we made bread in food and nutrition, and I had the bread which had yeast in it. So because we
Bake
had like a specific like recipe of developing it with a lot of yeast, and I was fine. So yeah.
it's how you just have to swap, and it's so easy.
Yeah.
And if it's going to take care of a leaky gut, and a lot of people are these days complaining of having an irritable bowel syndrome, and it's not that it's a fad that we've got to know. I'm sure it was there before also. It's just that people have now connected to the fact that that one inflammatory protein of gluten is causing the leaky gut. And that is the reason we are getting an irritable bowel syndrome. And why should we live like that? Let's have a good bowel movement where food gets digested properly and excreted properly, the waste material, and we are just good to go, Yeah.
So as we're talking about, alternatives for normal gluten food, how should you one approach reading food labels while grocery shopping, specifically in India, where there might not be as many gluten-free brands, so you may be wanting to use a normal brand that doesn't produce gluten-free stuff, but it may still be naturally gluten-free.
So, as if I'm advising a celiac client, my advice to them is to go even with the Indian brands which are allowed to be gluten free. There's this one mark which is there at the back which says gluten free, and also it's written gluten free. So that's the one we can trust. There may be some in which they might have written gluten free, but please still read the labels because the manufacturer might write made from wheat. So if supposing something like that has sneaked in, that means it's not essentially really gluten free. Also, sometimes the manufacturer has not even written down, whether it is made in a facility which has no contamination. It has to be very, very specific. These are the guidelines which has been given by the Food Authority of India to all the manufacturers who claim to be making gluten-free food. And it's a big market. So they have now, I think in 2015, they have come up with these list of do's and don'ts they send to the manufacturer, but they still want the consumer to be more aware of what they should look for when they're reading the label, because sometimes the labels don't end up saying it, or they might just sneak in a line which will let them, get away with having gluten in the system. So it's so important that you read your food labels correctly. And if it is gluten free now the authority has said that only those which come on those norms where there's no cross contamination, where the workers in the manufacturing facility have been taught not to, contaminate their, they have to wear overalls or PPE, this thing which are gluten free, and they have to necessarily keep that unit completely gluten free. That is when they get that gluten free label on their this thing. But still, be careful. It's so important to be careful.
Yeah,
The
that's
suffering so much outweighs anything. And please don't ever buy flour which is open, which is not packaged. Because sometimes even when you're using a scoop to take that flour out,
it could have been
maybe
used for another one.
could have been used for another one. So there's no surety in how many people are you going to ask whether it was or not. So that sneaky things, we have to avoid on our own.
Yeah, that's also, I was looking in the Q&A box. Someone asked, is makki ka atta okay to buy from the market? And I would suggest for that, again, as you mentioned, just about the scooper. Also, I've seen this problem with besan because they are naturally gluten free, but then if you're buying it from the market, they
Yeah.
might be mixed in with other things to make it more full rather than it just being the pure
Yeah.
substance of that. So for that reason, I at home specifically, I have a grinder in
Oh.
which I make all of my own um, flour. And some people might think that is like more of an investment, but then once you're investing in it, like you're going to have it for like 15, 20 years because it's not going to get spoiled because it's just like a physical grinder.
I think it's so healthy to do all your atas yourself. So if you have to do besan, all you have to do is the chana dal, roast it and put it
Exactly.
and grind it. Or if you have to do something like a makki ka atta, all you have to do is get the grain and do that. So you're more sure. I think it's a fabulous way to be educated and knowing that it works for you. And if you feel like having that makki atta or you feel like having the besan atta, might as well be gluten free and not pick it up from scoopers or packaged, which are not saying gluten free anyways.
Mhm. So, for our final question for our discussion today, before we move on to questions from the audience, are there any supplements you would recommend for a person on a gluten-free diet or someone who's, lacking one of those main components as a part of their diet?
Wheat essentially, which used to be the wheat initially, contains fiber, contains vitamin B6 to vitamin B12, and calcium. These supplements, anyways, I would suggest everybody to have their omega 3s. If they are vegetarian, then they can always look in for the vegetarian supplement for omega 3s. There's something called krill, which is available these days for them. Please have 1000 mg of omega 3s every day. Vitamin B complex or multivitamins, something to do. For a celiac patient, because vitamin D might be a issue, and I think it's via celiac patient, all of us have low vitamin D. Having a vitamin D supplement once a month is important because we guys don't go out in the sun so much anymore. We are more indoor people. Kids are also more indoors, so getting your regular dosage for vitamin D from a supplement is such a good idea to do. Also, another great supplement which I feel everybody should have today in this day of when we are trying to build our immunity is vitamin C, which is great, and magnesium. Magnesium helps to process all our food much faster because what it does, it makes the enzymes work faster. It is in the reaction. If you guys ever studied reactions, we always used to say there's a catalyst. Magnesium was the catalyst. We used to always write on top of the reaction. So when we are eating more magnesium, because we can't eat so much of magnesium rich food, if we do magnesium as part of a diet, it's a healthy way to go. And these are supplements, whether you're having gluten or not having gluten. These are supplements which we should ingest. They are all natural supplements, which sometimes we may not be able to ingest mostly in the diet. So it's something which everybody can do.
Thank you so much for your insights, Mrs. Ru.
So nice talking to you, Annika.
And now we're going to open the floor to the audience for questions. We've already got quite a few.
Okay.
So someone has asked, which brands are your favorite for gluten-free oats readily available in Chandigarh? So for me personally, I use We Are Free a lot. They have a whole range. Not only oats is like one of your components that you can make so many things, but they already have so many ready-made gluten-free goods that are really good. And then secondly, online, it's really easily available on Amazon,
Yeah. I
is
was just
this
going to
brand called Bob Red Mill,
say.
which also has a lot of these flowers, like you were mentioning Amarnath and
Yeah.
all of those flowers. So it's really good. Yeah.
Amaranth is another flower. They can actually, it's locally grown in India, so they can get the amaranth and pop it. In fact, one of our friends and Soul Fuel just did a very nice recipe the other day. And so, these things are just easy to incorporate into our daily diet and very good to do. Also, Bob Red Mill has the most amazing gluten-free flours or even almond flour. So if you can't make almond flour at home, please go ahead and do that. Buy that.
Someone has asked, they wanted to know whether a celiac patient can have medicines in the form of capsules. So personally, from my experience, whenever I've been ill, and this is always a question that I've asked my doctors as well, and they've always had varying opinions about this. But personally, I've got, so like a paracetamol and those, like online, if you look up the contents of the medicine and its make, it says really clearly of what there is, and there's really specific things to look out for, such as like the coating of the capsule might have gluten in it. So it's better to stick to ones which actually say gluten free on them.
Mhm.
So I'm not really sure about India, but in the US, there's a brand called Target, which is like a normal grocery store, and they have their own range of gluten-free medicines, and it says gluten-free like really clearly marked. And also, Up and Up is another one. It's a medicine brand. And then another thing I'd say to avoid is cough syrups because
Yeah,
binding agents
yeah, I was
used
just
to
going to
thicken
talk
them.
about that. Yeah, I was just
Yeah,
going to talk about that because cough syrups might have, they sometimes add sugar, and when they are adding sugar, they may, to make it more viscous, they might add something from, wheat, so that the starch may just kind of make it more easy to pour. Otherwise, it will be too watery. So cough syrup is something you really need to see and turn around and, check whether you can ingest it or not.
so someone has asked any tips on how to eat healthy on a holiday.
So what Annika's told you initially, in fact, if you're traveling domestically, I think Gluten Free app has those cards which tell you which restaurant would be easy to go to, which may serve you gluten-free food. If you are celiac, those are the things you need to really take care of. Talk to the manager when you go. In fact, ask him. My thing is that you ask him whether what do they do to keep their facility gluten free, rather than telling them that. You'll
Yeah.
immediately get to know that, whether the facility is easy to eat there or not. If you are not gluten free, you're not gluten sensitive, or you do not celiac, and you're just going to be on a gluten free diet on a holiday, you can enjoy yourself, but just order food which is like rice based, and you're good to go. And when you're traveling abroad, you actually get pizzas which are also gluten free, so
Yeah.
you can actually order accordingly. And like I told you, pasta is so easy to do. You have to just ask for a gluten free
And
pasta.
even like for pizzas, like I mentioned the brand We Are Free, which has all the ready-made
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
So
So
they have like they already have ready-made pizza bases. So if you're getting like a ready-made pizza base from Nick Baker's, it's the same as getting it from We Are Free, that you'll get easily in all the stores that
so
carry the brand.
it's become easy over the last, I think from the time you got it to now, I think
Yeah.
it's more easier to get the gluten
Yeah,
free.
I've definitely seen the development like over the years because there was not that like when I was diagnosed that time when I was here in India, there was like one store which carried a gluten-free brand, and now like every other store has the brands, which is really nice.
And I've noticed with the clients, once they get over the extreme addiction to, breads and cakes, they
Mm,
start loving living like that. So then they're also more informed. So now they're asking for things. So shops are keeping them. And, it's just like a thing where all of us are now, with the pandemic happening, all of us are more aware of how important it is for us to out of the box and look after ourselves to eat better.
mhm.
So these are the things which we change in our food, and we'll definitely feel better, look better, and not develop any unnecessary diseases which
Yeah.
are not needed. Yeah.
And then someone has said, so basically one can never have a cheat meal if you're gluten sensitive. And I completely disagree with that because
Please tell me about that.
because with the cheat meal, essentially it's something unhealthy, right? And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's an unhealthy thing if you've been like the whole week, you've been working really hard. Like I keep my cheat day on Sunday as well. And then when I'm outside, I just have like a burger, but I do it in a lettuce wrap because
Yeah,
you can't
yeah,
have the bread. And then
yeah.
it's equally, I mean, it's equally a cheap meal if it is gluten free. And as I mentioned, the brownies, like gluten free brownies, are so unhealthy
Oh, yummy. And
and they're
so
so good. And they're actually softer than normal brownies as
that's
well
after that. And then
because of the binding agent not being present. So they kind of like melt in your mouth. But
they
yeah,
go.
definitely that is like a myth that you cannot have a cheat meal if you're gluten sensitive because
No, something like an air fryer, everybody please invest in it and start having like French fries made in the air fryer. They're yum. Also sweet potato fries. So that's a resistant starch which works for each one of us, keeps us fuller longer. Just boil a sweet potato, cut it into like roundels and then put it in the air fryer, spray some oil, all the like, yummy seasonings you want. You can put peppers, you can put your garlic powder, you can put your black pepper powder and let it be in the air fryer for 10 minutes. They crisp up and they're the most delicious, side swaps to have. I won't even call it a cheat meal. They can actually have it every day.
yeah,
Like fun.
because like in French fries, essentially the potato is not even that unhealthy because it's just a carbohydrate, but it's the oil that you're using to fry the potato that's making it unhealthy.
Another swap which I do for many of my clients, everybody should know two things: that when you boil a potato and you cool it down, it develops this resistant starch which is so good for our gut. So please eat boiled potatoes. You can boil them, cool them, and then saute them, and they are really good to have. Also, when you are like doing a legume, when you're soaking your legume like rajma, chanas, add like a cupful of vinegar to it when you're soaking it. So it gets rid of this phytolectin which is present in these legumes. And what it does is it just is so easier on the gut to then digest. Small things, if we are aware and someone tells us what to do at Refuel, that's essentially what happens. So at Refuel, we tell our client how to refuel themselves, like as in not go on a restrictive diet. It's very important to be friends with food. So that is why the cheat is not something which is really needed. If you're eating right and you're going to be eating a good amount of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I'm not going to be depriving you. I'm going to tell you to eat all the food you can and make you have the swaps. So that's the only way to lose weight, to lose your inches, look better, and thrive, and also be able to exercise better. And that is how we came in the word refuel, because I tried doing all this, like, going off food, eating less, trying to lose weight. I realized just like a plant needs all its nutrition, only then it grows. I realized my system, or I only lost weight when I was eating right. And that's why we all need to refuel ourselves and eat the right food and grow better.
So I think for our last question today from the audience, this seems like a little bit of a case study here. So someone said their daughter has celiac and
Mhm.
diabetes type 1. So
Mhm.
should she take more precautions on special food? And she even has thyroid. And what kind of food should be avoided in these three kinds of diseases that might, I'm saying, maybe essentially worsen the effects?
So, for such a child, they should be off gluten, off dairy, because dairy is one thing which is got hormones, estrogen, which is like really, really up, doesn't really help diabetes, should be off sugar. And I mean, when they're off sugar, they should be taking in resistant starch more so that the insulin spike in their blood doesn't happen so much. And everything such a child or such a parent should be just careful in swapping with the right swaps. Whether it's gluten, you swap it with the gluten-free cereals. If it's milk or dairy, if I'm telling you to go off, you can do almond milk, coconut milk. And if they feel that their child might suffer with less calcium, let me tell them 2 glasses of milk has calcium, and 1 spoon of sesame seed chutney or a til chutney will have the same amount of calcium. So there are myths which we have all grown up with, thinking that milk will give them so much of nourishment and so much of calcium. No, the swaps are available in the food itself. As far as sugar is concerned, sugar is anyways not needed for any of us. It's just the addictive drug. According to me, it's the most addictive drug in the world, which is prevalent. And that's the first thing we should be off. Forget all the other drugs which make you high. Sugar is so high. that is why it should be off. I hope that answers the question.
So thank you so much, Mrs. Saroop, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. And thank you, everyone, for attending and writing such thought-provoking questions in the chat. I think we've all learned a tremendous amount about nutrition, food, and a gluten-free diet, and are hopefully better informed about it. Whether you're a celiac yourself or are helping a loved one who has celiac, it is important to note that there is a community of others who are in the same boat, and that there are various resources and alternatives which allow you to live your best gluten-free life. Please do check out the work that we are doing on my website at www.glutenfreejio.com, which has great free resources, including handy gluten-free recipes. And stay tuned for my upcoming app and recipe book and another webinar with the renowned gastroenterologist. Thank you so much for attending, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.